So the Gemara now has derived the Inui status of sandal, which means you have to take off your sandalim, from this pasuk that Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak quoted from Yirmiyahu Hanavi, where it says "Min iragleich miyachif," meaning the Navi is warning the people try to avoid a situation where you're going to have to end up going barefoot, meaning going out to the exile, and do tshuva before it's too late. And there's no possibility, according to this Gemara, of rejecting this proof by simply saying maybe it means you're going to go out to Golus in ripped shoes. And that's what the word Yachif means. No. The word Yachif here in this context of Golus, of exile, could not tolerate the interpretation that Yachif means in ripped shoes, because when you go out to Golus, you don't have ripped shoes. You go out barefoot, unfortunately. So therefore, we're going to go back to David HaMelech, now that we're empowered with our definition, our lexicon of Yachif, that Yachif means without shoes at all, and we're going to say that David HaMelech was suffering a state of Inui when he ran away from Avshalom, and he couldn't even wear shoes at all, no shoes at all. Not the way we rejected it. We said, no, maybe David HaMelech had ripped shoes on. He had no shoes on. That's what the word Yachif. Now the Gemara asks, Tashmish Hamita, we're up to number 5 on the list. The last of the mentioned categories of Inui is Tashmish Hamita. Sexual relations is the Ikri Inui Minol. What's the source that's called Inui? And I was actually hoping that the Gemara would quote the period of the slavery in Egypt, which is called a period of Inui, and that's a reference to Derech Eretz, which means Tashmish Hamita. But the Gemara has its own thinking cap on, not mine. And we're going to derive it from Lavan and his discussion when he admonishes Yaakov of him. Yaakov, if you recall, had married the daughters of Lavan, the 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah. And Yaakov gets the following warning, so to speak, from his shver, his father-in-law Lavan, not one of the greatest fathers-in-laws you want to have. The Chsiv in Bereishis Lamed Aleph, it says that when Yaakov Avinu departed from Lavan with his 2 wives, Rachel and Leah, the daughters of Lavan, Lavan says, Imtane es binosai, imtikach nashim al binosai, ein ish imanu re'ei elokim eid beini uveinechem. I'm warning you, says the father-in-law, says Lavan to Yaakov, don't afflict my daughters and don't marry other wives in addition to these 2. And now we turn to Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara explains this pasuk that Lavan was imposing an oath and warning Yaakov with 2 different warnings. Number 1, Imtanes B'nosai Mitashmish, meaning you don't fulfill your obligations, your conjugal obligations as a husband in marriage to both my daughters. And if you will desist and prevent them from having the ona, the intimacy of Tashmish Hamita, then you will be creating an Inui, and therefore you will be violating my warning of Imtane es Benosai. So you see that denying Tashmish Hamita is Inui. The Imtikach Noshim al Benosai means Bitzoros. He was warning Yaakov Avinu and imposing an oath on him that he should not marry other wives, because that would make sorrows, right? The word technically for a second wife, when you're still married to one wife who's alive and well, is Sarah. She's a tzara, which means she is a tzara to the first wife. And in any event, we see clearly that he was warning Yaakov Avinu not to be monea, not to be not to withhold tashmish, and that was expressed and formulated in the lashon of inui. So we derive from this that menias tashmish, meaning abstaining from intimacy, is considered inui. And the Gemara tries to reject this as well. V'ema, can I not be argumentative about it? and say that Idi ve'idi mitzaros, these are not two different warnings. He's warning Yaakov Avinu from not marrying other wives, and he's explaining why that would not be acceptable. And it means that we read it as one admonition. Im tikach noshim al benosai, when he adds, don't marry other women, that's an explanation. That is an explanation of what he meant in the Reisha, in his first statement of imtanes benosai. He's not talking, Lavan, at all about Menias Tachmish. He's talking about marrying another wife. And that's called Tana Espinosa. So we read it as two separate categories. One is in Tana Espinosa with Minias Tachmish, and then in Tikach Noshim Al Benosai. But that's all one. He's telling him, don't take other wives because that would be Tana Espinosa. My daughters will suffer inui from the fact that you married other wives and you violated the shvua of imtikach noshim al benos. So the Gemara answers and deflects this rejection by saying miksiv imtikach noshim al benosai below vav. It doesn't say in the absence of a vav. If there was no vav in the pasuk, that would imply that the imtanes benosai is a lead-in to lotikach noshim, to marry. But the imtikach, there's a vav, the vav of the imtikach at the end of this pasuk, right? The second half of the pasuk is a vav hamachalik. The vav is a separation. Mashma shtei azharos, the two different warnings. And the content of his oath had two different elements, two different paragraphs. And therefore, when it says in the first paragraph, imtana, that's separate from the im tikach noshim. If it was all one flow, the Torah would have omitted the vav, and it would have said imtana spinosai im tikach noshim. You'll be ma'ana, you'll inflict suffering and agony on my daughters if you will marry other wives. But that's not what it says. It says imtanes benosai, stop, and then v'im tikach noshim as a separate entity. So the imtane espinosai as a separate independent ratio is referring to Menias Tachmish. The Gemara still is argumentative and rejects this proof. Why? The Ema, perhaps we could suggest that Idi ve'idi mitzaros, that really is one long azhara, that Yaakov shouldn't be ma'ana espinosai, has nothing to do with Menias Tachmish, but because of marrying other wives. And why does he separate it into two with a vav hamachalik? That's because chad litzaros didei v'chad litzaros diasin le'mi alma. The first warning, imtanes benosai, means additional women that are already married to him. At this point in time, Yaakov Avinu, in addition to having Leah and Rachel as wives, he also had Bilhah and Zilpah. And here, Yaakov was getting a real severe warning from his father-in-law that he shouldn't elevate Zilpah and Bilhah to the same identical status, an equal status as Leah and Rachel, as if there are four wives and they're all equal. No. The two wives, which are called Pilagshim, of Bilhah and Zilpah, have to be on a lower level. And then and then in addition, in the Sefer, Lavan warns Yaakov that he should marry two additional wives, which would jack it up to the number 6. And the Gemara now gives a little extra gutshpanka, a little extra support to this question by saying, Dumya de'im tikach. In other words, when he warns Yaakov, Im tikach noshim al binosai, this is an extension of the original ratio of losa anes binosai, dumya di im tikach. Gemara rejects this, and with this we'll conclude. Miksiv im tikach the imtana v'im tikach. The sequence of the azharos of Lavan is very significant because Lavan first starts by saying imtana, and then only afterwards he says v'im tikach. If the way you're interpreting it, that imtana means that you'll elevate Bilah and Zilpah, the tzaros, to the status of gviros, like they're all equal wives, then he should have started with the shmua first of lo yikach noshim acheros alim, should marry others, and then he should have added he shouldn't be ma'ana Rachel and Leah by taking the two wives that he's already married to and elevating them to equal status and treating them the same way he treats Rachel and Leah. In other words, it's not the normal way of a person to be mazir something which is a little bit less severe and then go back to the more severe. He should have started with the azhar that's more severe and then added a tag on and even something that's kal yosef. Therefore, it seems clear that the imtana means minias tashmish, which is an inui kacha. It's a very difficult inui. And then go on to the sias noshim nosofos. And therefore, we're going to derive from this that minias tashmish is considered an inui. This is where we're going to stop here for today on Amar Le Rav Papa La Abaye. And again, we're still trying to derive from Lavan imtana that this is a reference to Minias Tash. Wish you a very good day, and thanks for persevering, even though we had a little bit of a fallout there in the middle.